Thank you very much. Well, I'm a confidence builder, and so every opportunity I get, I share with one how you can build confidence and tell a story, or through telling your story. So today, I'm going to show you how you can build your confidence and share your story. Did you know that the most powerful thing on earth is repeated thoughts? Got you thinking, right? Did you know that the most dangerous thing on earth is also repeated thoughts? The thing about repeated thoughts is that they either build you up or they tear down your confidence. Is there a story that you're ashamed of sharing, yet you have ruminated this story negatively in your mind? Maya Angelou said, "There is no greater burden than bearing an untold story." But there's magic in sharing your story. I can share with you how you can share your story and gain confidence. Lack of confidence in sharing our stories may come from the negative narrative that we replay in our minds, and how we talk to ourselves impact our days significantly. And so I didn't used to always think of my story as a positive story, but Robert Nesta Marley said, "Love the life you live and live the life you love." So I learned how to love the life I live. I used to feel shame and regret and unwanted and abandoned. Those are the things that repeated in my mind. But today, after this talk, I hope I can encourage you to not just share your story, but to stand on your story and gain confidence. Think of this. When you want to reach something that is out of reach, how do you get to it? You stand on something. Standing on something can help you get to new heights and reach your goals. So, you're going to share your story or learn to share your story by standing on your story. How do you do that, Denise? How do you stand on your story, you're asking? I heard you. So you stand on your story by using the acronym STAND. S, share your story. Don't be afraid of sharing your story. Share your story with even the Uber driver. I've learned through many studies that I've read that sharing your story can help you with PTSD, because by sharing your story repeatedly, it helps you bring new connection to the message. I've also read that soldiers who are affected by wartime experiences, the soldiers who can't sleep at night, they have gained help or healing from sharing their stories therapeutically. That is the power of sharing your story. T, there are two sides to everything, including your story. As much bad as there is in your story, there's as much good in your story. So remember that there are two sides to everything, including your story. A, analyze your emotions when you share your story. When you analyze your emotions, deal with them. Find someone you can talk to about it, maybe a therapist or a good counsel. But analyze your emotions and deal with them. I've heard Tony Robbins say that your habitual emotions create the quality of your life. So curate positive emotions by continuously analyzing how you feel and deal with it. N is nurture a positive narrative about your story, because what you say to yourself matters more than what anyone else says about you. I used to say, and I'll tell you my story in a little bit, but I used to say, my mother abandoned me. And when I started to nurture a positive narrative, I don't say that anymore. D, dictate your story and distribute it. So many people all over the world are listening and waiting for someone to share hope and inspiration. And your story may be that hope and inspiration. You never know who you will help by sharing your story. So we live in an era where it's easy to distribute your story. So share your story and distribute it around the world. When I was 3 years old, my mother left me and my siblings to go to America so she could have better opportunities for her and her children. Now, Chris Grosser said, opportunities don't just happen. They are created. I believe my mother must have known that when she decided to leave her children behind and go to another country. But I was 3 years old. I didn't understand that. And when I didn't see my mother come home, I started to wait for her. I stood by the windowsill and looked through, waiting for my mother to come home. When I didn't see mommy come home, I thought, maybe I missed her. So I started to look around the house for her. I looked everywhere she hid when we played hide and seek. I couldn't find her. So I asked, Daddy, where mommy there? My dad said, Mommy soon come. Now, if you know anything about most Jamaicans, soon come doesn't mean soon come. It could mean 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 years. 30 years later, I still haven't seen my mother. About 6 weeks after my mother left for America, my father died in a car accident. Immediately, I was like a foster child. I was placed from home to home to home. And by the time I was 6 years old, I had lived with 6 different family members. Now, compounding the issue, because I did not feel wanted in these homes. Not that anyone did anything to let me feel unwanted, but I felt nobody wanted me, I wasn't loved, I'm nobody's daughter, and I'm not wanted. Compounding the issue is when I was going from home to home, I was molested as a toddler. And then when I was 10 years old, I failed a very important exam that would allow me to matriculate to high school. I was devastated. I didn't realize that those early experiences were not predictions of my future. When I started my healing journey, I started to share my story. And as I shared my story, I realized some people had it far worse than me. Then I looked at my story and I saw that there really were 2 sides to my story. Yes, I did go from home to home to home, and 6 different homes accepted me. But 6 different times, 6 family members said, yes, we'll take care of her. So I looked at the positive in my story. I also started to analyze my emotions. I remember I was devastated, I was ashamed, and I was feeling abandoned. But then I realized I was also angry, and I wasn't dealing with the anger. As soon as I started getting good counsel and a real great therapist, I learned to deal with all of my emotions. And I started to look at or nurture a positive narrative in my story. And instead of saying my mother left me or my mother abandoned me, I started to say my mother left to go find better opportunities for her and her children. That sounds better, right? And so, I distributed my story. I wrote a book and distributed my story. And so many people from all over the world have told me that they have found hope and inspiration from my story. So my hope for you is that you can find a positive perspective from your story, no matter what you've been through. Shame, trauma, regret, heartbreak, it doesn't matter. My hope is that you can find a positive perspective of your story and repeat positive affirmations about yourself and about your story. I still use positive affirmations for myself to help me with my self-development. I say them in the mornings, afternoons, and at nights because I've learned that the most powerful thing on earth is repeated thoughts. So my hope for you is that you repeat some positive thoughts so you can one day stand on your story like I am. Today, I am so proud. I'm here on this TEDx stage mainly because of my story. I am literally standing on my story with confidence. Thank you very much.